Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to Ride or Die, a series of videos where I'm talking about the secrets, facts, and history of Disneyland rides in Anaheim, California. Today we are talking about Indiana Jones Adventure Temple of the Forbidden Eye. As you can see, today I am not in my normal recording place. I actually am home for Thanksgiving break, so I am not in my dorm room as I usually am. I am actually back home. So yeah, it's pretty exciting, and I actually haven't filmed in my room back home yet, so hopefully like the lighting's okay and everything works out okay, but it is gonna look a little bit different from my other videos. The Indiana Jones ride actually opened March 3rd, 1995. It cost Imagineers around $100 million and took about 7 years to create. About 2 years of construction and then 5 years of figuring out the idea and the mechanics and everything of the ride, because it is one of the most advanced rides in Disneyland, hence why it breaks down all the time. Construction began in August of 1993. So as I said, it took about 2-ish years to construct the ride. It is a very big ride with over 50,000 square feet. Disneyland Paris was actually the first to open an Indiana Jones ride in 1993, except theirs was actually a roller coaster, not the same adventure dark ride that we have today. And a very similar ride to ours also resides in Tokyo Disney Sea. It's almost the exact same thing, the same storyline kind of, except a little differences here or there and a little bit better graphics and animatronics and such. Disney World actually does not have an Indiana Jones ride, but they do have a little bit of a stunt show in Hollywood Studios, and that has been there since 1989. Now on to the logistics of the queue of the Indiana Jones ride, because it has one of the most complicated queues as well as one of the most entertaining queues in all of Disneyland. If you're standing in the queue directly outside the first little part that you walk in, the Mercedes vehicle that is actually sitting there was actually one of the stunt vehicles used in filming Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's one of the cars Indy slides under during the movie. And as I said earlier, it has one of the most complicated queues, and that's because the show building for the ride, a show building is where they hold the ride. It doesn't look like the ride is in there. It kind of almost looks like it's maintenance or just where they hold parts, or just looks like a random building, but the ride is actually inside there. Indiana Jones show building is actually a big green building that you can see if you're in like downtown Disney area. If you look over towards the park, a big green building, that's actually the Indiana Jones show building. And the only reason they have to do this is because due to the railroad, they actually could not make the ride in actual Disneyland. So the queue is actually a half a mile as guests walk through to the show building, and you actually go down under the railroad train tracks and over to the show building for the ride. A little more known fact, when the ride first opened, AT&T sponsored it for a couple years, so these decoder cards used to be given out to guests, and all over the walls you can see that there's little messages in a different language, and those cards used to help you decode the message. It is said that somewhere in the queue there's a rock that actually has the display of the decoder, so you can still decode the messages if you'd like, or you could probably just look up the AT&T sign and then go through the ride and decode what the messages actually say. Anything that says do not touch or pull throughout the queue is actually something you should touch or pull. There's a pole with a bunch of spikes and skeletons in one hallway. If you pull that, a sound effect will happen. And then there's also a rope as you get farther into the queue. If you pull that, another sound effect will happen of a excavator falling. It's kind of cool, but if you do pull it and nothing happens, don't worry. It takes a little bit to reset, so it just means someone close by actually just pulled it before you. And now, one of my favorite things about the queue that I point out to absolutely everyone that I take on this ride is that Indiana Jones actually used to be where the Eeyore parking lot was. And in order to kind of pay tribute to the Eeyore parking lot, there is a Eeyore parking sign still in the queue. If you're in the projection room where it's explaining the ride to you, if you look up above the projector, it's really hard to see because it is dark. You'll see an outline of Eeyore, and that's the sign that used to be in the parking lot. If you can't see it and you do get stopped up towards the front of the room by a cast member, you could ask them if they have a flashlight with them. They'll know exactly why you're asking, because I've asked them before and they go yes, and they just pull it out and start shining it on the Eeyore sign. But sometimes they don't have a flashlight. It just kind of depends on the cast member or the day or how busy they are. But if they do have a flashlight, they'll be more than happy to shine it on the sign for you. But you do have to be near them. Don't be like halfway through the room and try to go and get their attention, because then it just slows down the queue and just makes everyone else miserable. And then in the room directly after that, if you see there's a little caged off area, which is Indy's office. Inside that, it's said to have a bunch of props from the movie. If you can stop there, I would suggest doing it. Usually the line starts moving forward. If you did stop there, you would have people passing you in line. But it is cool to check out just once. There is a Life magazine hidden in there with a picture of Mickey on the cover, so that's pretty cool. Keep an eye out for that. And then if you are a big Indiana Jones fan, just look through and see what you can find. Now on to some of the more logistics of the ride. The ride and the queue together have 2,000 skulls throughout all of it. So that's a lot. However, none of them are real human skulls, don't worry. Only Pirates has a real human skull. They actually got the idea for the ride from Star Tours. One of the Imagineers liked the mechanics of the box that you move in Star Tours and wanted to think how you can make it mobile. They did find out how to do this. However, this is a very complex ride because it is like almost 2 rides in one. The wheels actually don't touch throughout the whole entire ride. It's just a box that's carrying you through and jostling you to get the hydraulics through. But due to this complex ride, it does break down a lot. So my suggestion is either to go do it first, or if it does break down, it usually comes back up within an hour or two. So hang out around that area and get on it right after it breaks down. But it does break down a lot, like almost every single day. I mean, I am exaggerating a little bit, but it does break down a lot. Apparently the track is so sensitive that even if a guest dropped a water bottle or any kind of item, the ride kind of shuts down because it feels the weight difference and thinks it needs to stop because it's broken. So the ride does stop. I've gotten stopped on it twice. One time they actually did turn on the lights and put up the railing, so we thought we were going to be evacuated, and we were stopped there for maybe like 5-10 minutes. But the ride actually did end up going through. I have been on the ride multiple times where the boulder at the end of the ride will not roll, and that's just because you don't hit the sensors right. It's really weird, but I've been on it, I want to say like 10 times where the boulder just doesn't go. Originally, it was supposed to be 2 rides intertwined into one. They wanted the original adventure ride as well as a minecart going through it, and then they also wanted to incorporate the Disneyland Railroad and Jungle Cruise into it. How they would do that, I have no idea. It's a very complicated idea. But they also wanted to drop off guests on the Jungle Cruise ride onto the Indiana Jones queue. And it was just a big idea, a little bit too big and too complicated. So they decided just to do the adventure ride just to make it a little bit more simple. So for those of you that do not know, the whole ride is encompassed around an idol of Mara. The legend has it that if you look into the eyes of Mara, you will face doom, but if you do not look into the eyes, you will be rewarded with one of 3 gifts: visions of the future, earthly riches, and eternal youth. Indy is actually trying to excavate the temple, but his funding runs out, so they try to send out guided tours of the temple ran by this man named Sala. But some of the tourists looked into the eyes of Mara and are in grave danger, so Indy has to go in and rescue them. But unfortunately, when Indy goes in to save the tourists, he also gets lost. So now Sala is asking tourists to help find Indy. And this is all said in the projection room. It's just sometimes when you're in there, you go through too fast and you don't get the whole story. Now this is where it starts getting a little bit complicated. Before you enter the first room where there's the 3 doors, the walls actually used to move to make it look like you were entering the right door, the left door, or the middle door. It was all one track, but since the walls would move, if you entered the right door, it would give you like earthly riches, and then if you entered the left door, it would give you eternal youth. But it's a little bit complicated, and in one of the refurbs they actually stopped doing that, so now you just go through the middle door. And the skull room on the ride with all the skeletons and skulls throughout, if you turn back to your left, there is a skeleton wearing a Mickey Mouse hat. It is really hard to see. I've only seen it once, but if you're in kind of the middle row all the way to the left, I think it's the best to see it. It's just a hidden Mickey in the ride. It's pretty cool because it's just a skeleton wearing a Mickey hat. But you do go through it so fast and there's skeletons flying at you, sometimes it's really hard to see. And then when you're going through the bridge with the big statue of Mara broken and her eyes all missing and everything, lasers do shoot out of her eye up to the ceiling, and you do hear kind of like the pew pew as you're sitting on the bridge, and every single time it's a little confusing because it's like, what's that noise? Well, originally they did have ice machines up there that would throw ice down colored so it looked like rubble, but it brought a lot of wear and tear to the ride, and since the ride already needs a lot of maintenance, they decided to just cut that part out because they do not need to worry about another function that will make the ride stop, because that ride already breaks down so much. Now, the most advanced part of the whole entire ride has to be the boulder scene at the end. For those of you that do not know, you ride up in your car, Indy is dangling on a rope above your car, and a boulder is rolling towards you just like in the movie. It looks as if the boulder's rolling towards you and you dive under it. However, the boulder is actually rolling stationary, and Indy and the walls are the part that moves. Your car doesn't move and the boulder doesn't move. An Imagineer got the idea from a car wash, just like how you're sitting in a car wash and the sponges and the brushes move past you, but it looks like you're moving. That's how he got the idea for that, but it is one of the most complex parts of the ride, and like I said earlier, there will be times when you go and your car kind of sits there and nothing happens, so you launch forward a little bit and then Indy goes, whoa, whoa, but there's nothing happening because you just didn't hit the sensor, and then you just dive under nothing. But it is pretty cool to see it if you're a Disney fan, just to be like, oh, what's happening? Nothing's moving. Like, it's just kind of cool to see sometimes. And that's all I have for today. I will see you guys in a couple weeks. I think I'm going to start doing bi-weekly videos just because college is very busy and it's kind of hard to do weekly videos, but I will try to get a video out every other week, if not every week. And thanks guys. If you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe, please. And make sure to share it with your friends. I'm trying to get a little bit more viewers out there because I am starting out and everything. But thanks guys. See you later.